سارة، صار عندي حادث سيارة واتصلت بالمحامي قاجي.
قصدين أنتي المحامي قاجي؟
يعني هذا المكتب اللي قالوا عليه أكبر مكتب محاماة عربي كلداني بأمريكا، قاجي؟
لا أنا محامي بالقاجي لا. أنا أعرف لورنس، هو قال لي قاجي لا.
أنا أعرف العائلة زين، يقولوها قاجي.
بعد أي حادث سيارة اتصلوا بيا، أنا محامي لورنس قاجي. 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، مساء الخير عليكم وأهلا وسهلا بكم مرة أخرى في برنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي. واليوم رحب بالمحامي أولا مستر لورنس، ويلكم.
Thank you for having us.
وأيضا نرحب بالمحامي جان شرودر اللي غايب عنا about 3 weeks.
Well, it's wonderful to be back. Thank you.
وأهلا وسهلا بالست مارا الباراليجل اللي تترجم لنا. طبعا مستمعينا، احنا دائما نتحدث ونجيب محامين، مثل ما الاسبوع الماضي كان عندنا محامي، الاسبوع اللي قبله كان عندنا محامي، والمكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي دائما يحب انه يجيب محامين اختصاص لكل القضايا الاخرى، لان هم اختصاص حوادث السيارات، ويجيبوا لنا محامين حتى نفيد ابناء الجاليه. رايت؟
right.
واليوم راح نتحدث، طبعا نرجع اليوم نتحدث عن حوادث السيارات.
So we're going to get back on track today.
نرجع لوضعنا الأصلي. طبعا ست مارا، اليوم شنو حديثنا راح يكون؟ أنت مخططين أنتم.
Like Mr. Sahar said, we've been for 2 weeks. We had other attorneys who we work with. We have Mr. Lawrence has a big connections with other lawyers, working with other lawyers with different specialties. We are specialized with auto, of course, and we are back today talking about auto laws. We are going to talk today about the Senate bill, the 530, if I am right, the the no fault.
Well, it hasn't amended it yet. But it was just passed by the Senate. But we'll talk about how that works.
So اليوم راح يكون حديثنا مجلس الشيوخ وافق موافقة بدائية على تغيير النو فولت الطبابة القوانين مال الطبابة والمساعدات البيتية يعني البي اي بي البيرسونال بروتكشن. وافق موافقة بدائية، وهسه راح تصعد للسنت ونشوف إذا راح يقبلون يغيروها.
جيد.
So I have a question for you before we start.
Yes, go ahead.
How come whenever we bring guest speakers, we get more callers than when we do our program? We need some more callers. we need some callers.
We need some callers. طبعا الخطوط مفتوحة لاستقبال مكالماتكم. أي سؤال عن أي شيء، حتى مو قضية إنه إلا بحوادث السيارات، لكن أي موضوع آخر تقدرون تتصلون بنا على 586-825-2015 586-825-2015. اسألوا أي سؤال عندكم يخص المحاماة، مو شرط إلا حوادث السيارات. يعني
I can answer that question.
Yes,
it's because we've done such a great job of explaining everything. There's no questions left. Everybody knows everything because we've explained it.
فعلا you are right. لأنه دا يشرحون كل القضايا اللي أنت في بالك، اللي أنتوا تفكرون بها أنه تريدون تسألوها، هو دا يشرحها. إذا كان المحامي جان وإذا كان المحامي لورنس، فعلا he is right. هو أقول لك smart. He is smart.
ما شاء الله. لا حد يحسده.
لا طبعا.
So where else can the listeners submit their questions? On Facebook as well?
Yes. طبعا أي واحد عندنا تنقل حلقة لايف على الفيسبوك، وأيضا على صفحتنا في اليوتيوب. طبعا اعتيادي. احنا كان عندنا عطل إلى ساعة 12:30 اليوم، فاشتغل مهم. هذا أهم شيء.
هاي أهم شيء. The radio was down till 12:30 today.
Oh
Oh
wow!
my goodness!
It just came up. Thank God.
Good.
So we were just on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think today we were going to talk a little bit about the recent bill that was passed in the Senate, as Tamara indicated, Senate Bill 530. And to be clear, this is not law yet, right? This is a bill that was introduced and passed by the Senate. And as many people know, a bill, when it's introduced, has to be passed by both the Senate and the House, and then signed by the governor to become law within the state of Michigan, just like at the federal level, right? It has to pass the House and the Senate and be signed by the President of the United States. It's similar, only this is on the state level.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي جان قال بأنه هاي واحدة من القوانين اللي نريد نغيرها عبرت مجلس الشيوخ، مثل لازم بها عدة مراحل. لازم أول شيء تعبر مجلس الشيوخ، بعدين الهاوس يعني الأعلى
نعم.
ثم
House, then Senate, and then signed by the governor.
The governor اللي هي Whitmore,
right? Yeah.
Yes. For Michigan.
The Michigan's governor, correct.
Yes.
احنا طبعا اعتيادي لانه تابعين احنا الميشيغان.
Yes. نعم. كل القوانين اللي مالتنا اختصاصها فقط في ميشيغان.
في ميشيغان. نعم.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's well, John, why don't we kind of explain where this whole thing came from?
Absolutely.
Right? So,
that's what I was going to say.
There was some changes in the law for the last few years, and
in 2019.
Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. Just kind of give the listeners a background. Maybe they missed one of our shows that spoke about the new changes to the law.
For those who haven't listened to every single episode of our show judiciously, we've discussed before that, prior to 2019, we had the Michigan No Fault Act, and the Michigan No Fault Act allowed, amongst many other things, everybody unlimited personal injury protection benefits under the law. And as part of the 2019 no fault reforms, they instituted a large number of changes, but many of those included fee schedules, right? And caps on the amount of attendant care that family members could provide, amongst other changes.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه الاحتمال قبل كم جلسة ويانا هنا ما سمعتونا، بس قبل 2019
نعم.
كان اكو قوانين وتغيرت وراء 2019. واحدة من هاي التغييرات بأنه الفي سكجولينج، يعني من نرفع قضية المقدار مال القضية صار أعلى. والشغلة الثانية والمهمة جدا للمستمعين مالتنا هي المساعدة الصحية والمساعدة الشخصية، بأنه إذا أنت كنت متضرر جسديا وتحتاج أحد يساعدك، هاي همنا يقصوا من عندها، سواها محددة، وكانت دائما ساعات مو مفتوحة بس حسب الطبيب اللي يطلبها طبعا، بس كانت حسب الطبيب إذا يقول 8 ساعات 8 ساعات. هسه حددوا الساعات وحددوا إيش قد لازم يدفعون. فهاي واحدة من القوانين اللي يريدون يغيروها.
And I think with respect to attendant care, I mean, maybe Lawrence, if you want to go into it, there were a lot of problems with respect to attendant care.
I was just going to say, so obviously we're talking about these changes, and we've spoken about changes before.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our courts, our Supreme Court right now, also everything else that goes in, I just have a good feeling about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Right. I do think things are going to look up for us, for the plaintiffs that work on car accidents and other sort of cases, slip and fall. I do think that it is looking up for us, and I'm excited to see what happens over the next 4 or 5 years, in terms of bills that are passed into law and things of that nature.
Yeah, and the interpretation of those laws.
Right.
Yes.
المحامين هنا يتناقشون بأنه عندهم أمل جدا كبير بأنه الأمور شوية تصير من صالح الزبون، خاصة لأنه التدخل بالمحكمة العليا هم صار. نحاول بأنه يعني بها أمل كبير بأنه تصير من صالح الزبون، خلينا نقول.
So one of the things though that was affected by the law, right, was there was this 56-hour limitation on attendant care. And we saw that firsthand in a couple of our cases, right?
Mhm.
Where there were
Family provider attendant care.
yes, with the family provided attendant care, and there were some cases where people were injured as far back as 1980s, right, or any time after the No Fault Act was passed. And what did the insurance companies do right after the No Fault reform? They stopped paying for full 24-hour attendant care that was needed
And you mean 56 hours per
week.
week.
Right. That was what the no fault reform. That was all that it allowed for. At least that was what the
So
insurance.
essentially, if
company's
someone was
position
getting 24 hours of attending care every day, that's
Yes.
2 days.
2 days exactly.
2 out of 7 days of the week.
Exactly. So واحدة من الأشياء اللي هسه هم قلنا لها بأنه المساعدات الشخصية ولو المساعدات المرضية، بأنه إذا أحد من الأهل ساعدك بالبيت، لأنه أنت مثلا رجليك مكسورة، إيديك مكسورة، لو عندك ضرر بالدماغ وما تقدر يعني معاق بشكل أو بآخر
تقريبا
قسم من عندهم يحتاجون 24 ساعة رعاية.
نعم.
ولأنه we have a call.
Oh, we have a caller.
There
Wonderful.
you go.
صوت الغد تفضلوا.
مرحبا أستاذ ساهر.
مرحبا عزيزتي.
أولا أشكرك على هذا البرنامج لأنه كل البرامج مالتك حلوة، كل مرة تطلع لنا دكتور، مرة محامي، مرة مال انشورنس. أشكرك شكرا جزيلا. إن شاء الله إلى الأمام مثل ما يقولك. ممكن أسأل محامي؟
تفضلي.
بس أنا عندي أخويا يعني ما عنده جنسية، يعني أكو شيء المحامي يقدر يسوي ويريد يسوي بالعربي، يقدر عنده 15 يعني مخلص 15 سنة هنا هو.
طبعا تقدر انت تتصلين بالمكتب مالتنا واحنا نعطيك محامي مال الهجره مال الاميجريشن. رقم تليفوننا كتبيه حبيبي يكون عندك.
اي نعم. ايش رقمه؟
248 702 6641.
اوكي 641. اوكي شكرا.
اهلا وسهلا.
يعني خابر يمكم هناك راسنا خابر.
Yeah, so just give us a call and
we'll get
يحجون عربي ايضا.
ونحولك الى محامي هجره.
شكرا.
اهلا وسهلا.
مع السلامه. مع السلامه.
طبعا اي واحد عنده سؤال استفسار مثل ما ذكرت اني قلت اي سؤال لاي شغله اخرى، يعني مو شرط الا حوادث السيارات. مكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي يقوم بكل هالاعمال. يعني
You know what else we can do, Sahar? If we have to make a referral to another law firm,
yes.
And let's say that law firm doesn't speak Arabic or Chaldean, we can also help in translating in between that person, client, or and the other law firm.
يعني حتى لو ما
إذا سوينا يعني حولنا قضية إلى أي مكتب آخر وهذا المكتب ما يحكي إنجليزي ما يحكي عربي،
نعم.
إحنا مستعدين بأنه إحنا نكون موجودين ونترجم للزبون.
فعلا.
Because what I look at when I make referrals is I'm looking for the best lawyer for that particular specialty, right? So sometimes that may not be an Arabic lawyer.
Exactly.
So we'd be more than happy to translate and get things going for the client.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي قال احنا نحاول بأن نحط لكم احسن المحامين واكثريتهم عندهم خبرة ومهارة. مرات ما يحكون اللغة العربية. احنا مستعدين بأنه نكون نساعد ونترجم.
And this is a free of charge. We don't charge for this. This is just kind of to help you guys out and get things on the right track.
وهاي أيضا ما بيها أي تكاليف، هاي كلها مجانا من عندنا من المكتب just لمساعدة الجالية مالتنا. نرجع إلى موضوعنا. للمساعدات الصحية أو الشخصية أكو هواية ناس متضررين يحتاجون 24 ساعة خدمة. هذا القانون اللي تغير وراء 2019 حددوه إلى 56 ساعة بالأسبوع. معناته هذا الشخص أبو 24 إلى حق بس يومين أو 3 أيام يقدر يأخذ المساعدة فقط، وباقي الأيام ما يقدر لو ما يدفعوا له. هاي واحدة من القوانين نريد نغيرها اللي هسه عبرت مجلس الشيوخ.
And tomorrow, obviously this puts people in a very bad position, right? Because if let's say you're caring for your son, your father, whatever, and they're only paying you for 2 days out of the 7 days, it's it's going to be very tough.
very
Right.
tough.
If you have to take off of work, where else is that money going to come from?
بالضبط. هواية اكو عوائل لازم الام مثلا توقف شغلها حتى تساعد ابنها او زوجها او حتى اهلها. اذا هم يدفعون بس يومين لو 3 منو راح يدفع باقي الايام؟
5 أيام الأخرى من الأسبوع.
شلون راح يعيشون؟ فهاي وحده من الاشياء اللي
Yeah, so that's one thing they're trying to change. So
نحاول
for this
نغيرها.
bill.
Right.
So John, what does that bill say exactly about the 56-hour attendant care rule?
Well, so there, that's a great question. So that's it's eliminated. And what they've done is the revision to the bill actually strikes out what the original reform had done, to make it clear, is they had made the maximum compensable hours of family provided care attached to a workers' compensation act, which limited it.
So prior to this, there was no limit.
Right.
There was no hour limit.
That's
whatever
right.
the attendant care hours was, whatever the doctor is prescribing, essentially is what you're going to.
That's right. So prior to the 2019 reform, there was, people purchased an insurance policy and it was as much as you needed, right? As much as was reasonable and necessary, okay, for the care, recovery, rehabilitation. After the 2019 no-fault reform, they attached it to the Workers' Compensation Act, which said that the care was no more than 56 hours per week. What this bill, if this bill becomes law, would do is allow people to utilize their own family members again in their own household and still be compensated for it.
كان قبل ما القانون يتغير كان اكو بانه للمساعدات الصحيه مفتوح.
نعم.
ماكو اي تحديد. ورا 2019 حددوا ودمجوها ويا الوركرز كامب اللي هي اذا صار عندك اي ضرر بالشغل، وحددوها الى 56 ساعه. هسه اذا هذا القانون يعبر المحكمة العليا،
نعم.
مالتنا السناتر، معناته الجفرنر سوري، معناته راح يفتحوه مرة الأخرى يسووه unlimited، والأهل يقدرون يساعدوكم، وهاي كلها لصالح الزبون.
So essentially, we'd go back to how the law was prior to the reform.
Yes.
Well, not quite.
No?
And the reason is because remember that there's also a fee schedule that was put in place under the 2019
Right. In
no-fault
terms
reform.
of the hours or
But in terms of the hours,
care?
in terms of the amount of hours that theoretically could be provided, yeah. So my understanding of this is that we'd be going back to prior to the no-fault reform, which is good for those people who are injured in the future, because what we're under right now, unless this passes, what we're under is a situation where, although people maybe who contracted, this is subject to litigation, but people who contracted for this benefit in the past might still get their 24-hour attendant care. People who are injured right now today are subject to a limitation, which means you have to hire a company in order for the insurance company to pay it, which is an odd thing to have to do if you have a family member who's willing to provide it.
So
حاليا ورا ما تغير القانون بال 2019 وسووه 56 ساعة، مو بس أولا ما يخلون أحد من الأهل يساعدك، لازم تجيب شركة خاصة.
نعم.
هي تجي تساعدك، مع العلم أنت عندك أهلك واللي هم يعرفوك أحسن شلون يقدر يساعدوك. هاي وحدة. الاثنين يحاولون بأنه يرجعوه مثل قبل، مفتوح يعني دائما يكون الأهل يقدرون يساعدوك وماكو أي ساعة بالضبط،
وما محددة
ساعته، بس إيش قد ما الطبيب يطلب لازم من الطبيب، لازم أكو ورقة يعني ورقة من الطبيب بأنه أنت تحتاج هاي المساعدة.
نعم.
وكم ساعة.
I mean, some things have changed since the reform, but when the reform first happened, this was all over the news. This was probably the biggest part about, why we didn't want this to pass, was because you had someone that got into a car accident in 1985, is getting 24 hours of attending care, and then all of a sudden only gets 56.
And,
So
and there were arguments, of course, in the courts about whether or not this was retroactive or not, or whether this was prospective but still applied. And
they went through some of that stuff. We don't have to go into it today.
Right.
But essentially, so John, there's that aspect of the bill. There's also a fee schedule aspect of it, right?
So one of the other things that the 2019 no-fault reform did, and again, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the Michigan No-Fault Act and car accidents and how essentially your medical providers are being compensated, right? So one of the other things that they did was they set a fee schedule in the 2019 no-fault reform that said, well, we're going to pay certain types of services at certain rates. And a lot of services were set based upon the Medicare fee schedule, and it would go down over years from 200% of the Medicare to 195% and then 190%. And so the compensation that providers were getting while inflation was going up, their compensation was going down for the services provided.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه اللي صار ورا 2019 بأنهم كل شيء بدأ يصعد. والقانون الجديد دا يقلل من المساعدات،
يعني تقليل مساعدة
تقليل المصاريف وما يصير بالضبط، وما يصير الأهل يساعدوك، لازم شركة يعني تجي بالضبط كلها مو من صالح الزبون. فالمحامين كلهم يعني اتفقوا بأنه هذا غلط وسووا قوانين جديدة ودا يحاولون يوخرون هذا القانون يرجعوه إلى البداية بالضبط، لأنه كان قبل مثلا إذا أنت متضرر بال2000 قول بال 1995
يعني قبل
بالضبط ورا ما تغير القانون، اذا انت كنت اكو هوايه اكو كلش هوايه من حوادث السيارات يصير عندهم شلل، يصير عندهم، فهذول
يبقى طول عمره انه يحتاج
بالضبط 24 ساعه. هذا شلون بال 24 ساعه يتحول الى 56 ساعه ولازم تجي شركه ومو اهله وهو متعودين هم اهله يداروه وكل شيء. فشي كان جدا صعب ومو صحيح همينه
طبعا.
So this not only changed the attendant care rates and stuff, but it also changed the providers and how much the providers are getting paid.
Exactly.
So your pain doctor, your physical therapy, all of that stuff was put on the fee schedule now. And I don't think down is I think that's an understatement, right? So there's providers that their bill amounts were 10 to 12 times what the fee schedule is now.
Right. Right. Under the 2019 no-fault reforms, like for example, an MRI, an MRI might be billed at anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000, and they're being compensated at maybe $100 to $200, which is a little bit. It's a drastic reduction,
right?
And you can argue over what the reasonable rate of an MRI would be, but there are definitely a lot of businesses that took a lot of hits and stopped providing care. They stopped providing care or services to those people who were injured in auto accidents.
I mean, how many providers did you hear from that said, I can't afford it. I can't pay my people to work and also get pennies from the insurance company.
Exactly.
مو بس المساعدات الصحية تضررت، أهل الثيرابي، الأطباء، أهل الأمراي كلها حطوا أسعار غير حقيقية. مثلا الأمراي بين 1000 وال2000 يدفعوا لهم بس 100 لو 200.
ما تصرف
المشكلة وين صارت؟ بأنه هذا أبو الطبيب أو أبو الأمراي أو أبو الثيرابي ما يقدر بعد يجيب يعني يد عاملة وياه تساعده، لأنه ما يقدر يسد المصاريف مالته بعد همينه. هاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي همينه والسيرفيس مالتهم همينه يعني صار لأنه ماكو أيدي عاملة، قل السيرفيس لازم كل مثلا إذا كنت مثلا كل ربع ساعة يشوفون مريض، هسه لازم يجوز بالساعة مرة لأنه ماكو أيدي عاملة كافية، فكل شيء تراجع لي ورا.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that this isn't like health insurance, right? Where you submit a bill and then you get a payment a couple of weeks later. In the no-fault arena, the insurance companies by law
can wait at least 30 days. But realistically, in our industry, if you ask a provider how long it takes for them to get paid, it's not 30 days, right? I mean, in reality, it can be 3, 6, 9 months, a year. It can be at the end of a lawsuit that takes 2 years or 3 years to complete before they get any payment. So when you're talking about a fee schedule that was put in place in 2019, which reduced it in some cases to 10%,
Right.
or maybe even less of their bill amount, and then they have to wait 3 years to get that 10% of their bill, you can see why there are some providers, and this was actually pretty well substantially in the news about attendant care providers simply closing shop.
Yeah.
They went out of business and they said, we are not going to take
راح يسبب
auto
إنه
clients.
أهل الثيرابي كلهم يحزنون.
صارت هاي كلها.
It happened.
It happened already.
Right.
هاي صارت.
I've seen personally a lot of doctors' offices and physical therapists that have already closed
Closed.
down.
Yes,
Or they
I
just
know too.
change and don't take auto insurance, right?
Yes.
There are people who, I used to work with a few years ago. There's a very good dentist who treated temporomandibular jaw dysfunction. He left the field completely. There are attendant care facilities that I know personally closed their doors, right? And some who, instead of closing their doors, simply said, we don't take auto anymore. When that's a problem if you're trying to get treatment.
الشرح الفرق بين الانشورنس الصحي من تروح للطبيب، والطبيب يعني يفحصك، يخلص، يقدم مالته القائمة ويندفع له خلال أسبوع.
نعم.
بينما الانشورنس السيارة يقول لك عندك 30 يوم يلا يستلم الطبيب الفلوس مالته، بس هذا مو صحيح.
لا.
اكو قسم ما ياخذون، ما يستلمون اي مصاريف خلال 6 اشهر، 9 اشهر، سنة، مرات لما تصير تصفية للقضية يلا ياخذوا بالضبط، يلا ياخذه. ورا 2019
نعم.
قاموا يدفعوا لهم 10% فقط من مالتهم القائمة. فتخيل انت اولا تعالج احد ماكو إلها دخل، ورا 3 سنين يجيك الدخل 10%،
يعني ما مستلم ولا
بالضبط. فورا 2019 كلش هواية أطباء أمراي فيزيكال ثيرابي، قول أي نوع من أنواع هواية محلات
الخدمات
الطبية لو سدت، لو غيرت بأنه هي بعد ما تأخذ حوادث سيارات.
Which is very, very, very bad. And I'll tell you why. Usually when you get into a car accident, you have a long list of providers that you can treat with, right? Because most people were taking auto insurance. They paid better than health insurance, but at the same time, like John was saying, sometimes you have to wait 2 years to get a payment, right?
That's wrong.
Now you have less options.
Right. That's exactly right. There are fewer people,
You have less options,
fewer
and
choices.
You have
قبل كانت الحوادث السيارات أكثر الأطباء يأخذوها، لأنه المصاريف مال الحوادث السيارات أعلى من المصاريف الطبية العادية، فكان يأخذ الطبيب. طبعا كل واحد يريد اللي أحسن له.
نعم.
ورا هذا 2019 اللي صار قام بعد ما ياخذون، فصار عندنا مشكلة وين ندز الزبون إلى منه. مو الكل تقبل تاخذ بعد حوادث سيارات، فصارت يعني المشكلة قامت تكبر وتكبر وتكبر وصعبة همينة.
صحيح. Now, one of the other things I think is important just to mention as far as like the specifics go, if you had a facility who is providing attendant care specifically, and that is that nursing care that essentially people need after an accident. That could be for things like bathing, dressing. It could be for, helping with the shower. It could be help with, using the bathroom, right? So there were facilities that were needed by families to come in and help those families with that specific type of care. And what happened after, again, the 2019 no-fault reform is, I was getting calls from these attendant care providers saying, hey, we used to bill at $22 an hour for this care that we were providing, and the insurance companies are only now willing to pay me $11. But the problem is I pay my workers
$13 an hour.
I lose $2.
So before any costs associated with the business, just having a worker go in, I'm already losing $2 an hour. What do I do? And, you know, especially right after the reform, I'm like, I got to be honest, I'm not sure what to tell you yet, because, you know, we've got this new law that's been passed.
Yes.
So, and I think
You think
that was part of what is, I think, trying to be addressed by this.
I
new
think,
bill.
Sarah, I think they
you would
realize.
think they will change it?
Well, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I think they realize that the fee schedule is too low. You know, when the reform happened, there was supposed to be faster payments, right? That's what was promised to all the providers. You will get faster
Yeah.
payments; it'll be streamlined. That didn't happen. I
No,
can
it
tell you
didn't.
guys firsthand.
think
I agree.
That
with
did
you.
not happen.
I agree.
You
Right.
discuss everything to them.
Right. So I think the legislature is realizing that, hey, a lot of this stuff that was promised, it didn't happen. So
Well, and the other thing they promised, right, was a reduction in insurance rates.
yes.
And I don't know about you, but I haven't seen
well,
it.
Oh,
to
no.
ask listeners, have you guys had a reduction in your insurance rates? I
No.
certainly have not.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny
and they
because
did promise this when the reform
Yep.
happened. They said they promised the state that they were going to have lesser premiums.
Yeah.
How's your car insurance? Is your car insurance
Yes.
the same, higher, lower,
Higher.
higher now?
There you go.
okay, so you
Everybody.
didn't get a reduction. Did you get a reduction?
No, I
did
did
you
not.
did you
Yeah,
get a
I did not
reduction?
get a reduction.
So out of the 4 people in this room, and to be fair, we're not a complete sample size. Okay, we're only 4 people. But out of the 4 people in this room, none of us
I think the listeners get the point, right?
What
Yeah,
about
saw
the
a
others?
reduction.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Right. I mean, you know what? I'd invite the callers to say, if you
That
got a
didn't-
significant
eight-
reduction, let
yeah,
us
Let me
know.
know.
Eight
Yeah, you'll
from
change my
10.
opinion on that.
Yeah, you know, if you got a significant reduction, call us, let us know. But maybe your bills went up, and if so, you know, you let us know that too. I'd be interested what the listeners have to say about that. But yeah.
من حطوا القانون بال 2019 خلوا بعض الاشياء قالوا بانه إن الاطباء or اي مو بس الاطباء طبعا اي شيء صحي له علاقه بالحوادث السيارات
نعم.
راح الدفع مالتهم راح يصير اسرع واسهل. ما صارت. الاتندنج كير اللي هي المساعده الصحيه كانوا يدفعون الشركات مال المساعدات الصحيه يدفعون بالساعه $22
نعم.
قصوها الى $11
زين.
بالنص والصاحب المكان يدفع للعامل مالته 13 يعني هو بعد كل شيء ما مسوي
خسر
$2 من كل شيء حتى وبعد ما عنده لا مصاريف كهرباء لا مي لا المكان مالته لا كل شيء. هاي بس بالضبط. هاي 2 3 بأنه what was the other thing we talked about attending care, we talked about the paying the doctors, and what else?
Only these 2.
I mean, just in general, there are medical services that were all affected by the
كلها تأثرت. كل الخدمات الطبية تأثرت.
by the reform.
هذا اللي يريدون يسووه بأنه يغيرون يرجعوه للبداية مثل ما كان قبل مفتوح. ثالث شيء ذكرته بأنه they promise us وعدوا الكل مو إنه وعدوا الكل الشعب بأنه ينزلون الانشورنس مال السيارة ولحد اليوم احنا نشوف بأنه ماكو أي تنزيل بالعكس صعد مرة لخ it's every 6 months you are getting more and more and more. بالضبط. so ماكو أي شيء صار اللي عليه قالوه بال 2019 لحد الآن.
Yeah. So just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that this reform package that is in front of the Senate will necessarily solve all the problems. Okay. We're going to have to see how this plays out, but it does increase the amount of the reimbursements in general. For example, those things that were tied to Medicare that we were talking about, 195 or 195% of Medicare have been increased up to 250%. Okay. So it's a little bit of an increase. Now, that may tip the scales on whether or not some of these businesses can afford to do it. I don't know that they're going to, make a whole lot of money off of the changes here, but at least it's a little better.
Is there a schedule like how the original amendment was?
So again,
it decreases per every year.
So I believe there is a schedule, but it actually increases up to 250%.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is there is a schedule of various services that if they aren't covered by Medicare, then they have delineated the reimbursement rates. And this was one of those things that was kind of up in the air after the 2019 no-fault reforms as to how to calculate everything. And so what I think this bill does is it specifies, like, basically by CPT code, which is just a billing code, and I don't want to get into
So do
the
they touch
specifics
on
of
the
that.
on the 55% of what provider was charging in what was it 2019?
So I believe so. I'm not 100% sure on
if
how
I saw anything
all of-
about that.
Yeah,
in
I'm
there.
not sure on how all of that will hash out in this bill as of yet. It's still a little early,
And look, like you said, this is just a bill. There's a lot of bills that
and it could undergo changes.
right.
You think they will go back to law before 2019?
No.
No, I don't think so. I
You
think
don't
there
think?
will be some good changes made because, like I said, I think our Supreme Court is very solid right now, and I do think they're making changes to better what they did before. But I don't think it'll go back to how it was before.
Well, and to be clear, the Supreme Court obviously is the judicial branch, and what we're talking about is the legislative branch that's passing a new bill, and the Supreme Court interprets, the old bill. But to what you said, you're absolutely right. I mean, our Supreme Court has done a good job of explaining, that you can't retroactively reduce and eliminate rights for people who were injured before the reforms. But what they can't do is they can't say going forward that these people who are now injured get the old rights.
So I'll give you an example of what our Supreme Court
Yes.
did recently. So when the reform first happened, like John was saying, they were attending care was cut off after a certain point. Right. Now our Supreme Court said, hey, if your accident happened prior to
the 2019
the 2019 reform, then that wouldn't apply to you.
Right.
So that was huge.
Right.
And that's just one case that out of many cases that we've seen recently that have come out in our favor.
Yeah.
Did this affect you?
Absolutely.
lot.
Absolutely did. Yes.
Well, it affects a lot of our clients,
Yeah.
right?
Not me and my clients. I mean,
Yes,
yes,
I know.
that's
Yeah.
that's what you
Yeah,
meant.
that's what I mean.
القانون هذا هل راح يرجع إلى ما قبل 2019؟ لا، بس يحاولون يغيروا إلى الأفضل.
نعم.
أول شيء بأنه هم
يعني أفضل من 2019.
بالضبط،
Yes.
أفضل من
Yeah.
2019.
نعم.
مثلا المساعدة الصحية هي من قطعوها حتى اللي كان قبل 2019.
نعم.
هسه اللي رجعوه قالوا لا بس من 2019 وفوق حتى لا يرجعوا، لانه هوايه اكو تضرروا وما يقدرون يعني يقصوها. هاي واحده من الاشياء الايجابيه.
نعم.
هل راح يتغير كل شيء؟ بعد ما ندري. بعد يعني معلق مداولات بالضبط.
نعم.
We have a call.
Wonderful.
صوت الغد، تفضلوا.
ألو، مرحبا، شلونكم؟
أهلا وسهلا أختي.
اوكي، سؤالي للأخت تمارا.
نعم.
I had a question for you about the person get involved in a car accident.
تفضلي.
How long it takes from first day filing the case?
Okay.
Plus the okay.
It's a great question.
That's a great question.
سؤال جدا مهم. بس اكو شويه فرق بين شو وقت نرفع قضيه لو من شو وقت صار الحادث.
We can just go through from the accident date all the way
فراح اشرح لك من يوم اللي صار الحادث الى النهايه. اوكي.
نعم.
Yes.
تحبين تبقين ويانا؟ تحبين تروحين؟ إذا تحبين تسمعينا
اسمعكم is fine. Yes.
سمعينا. ظلي سمعينا. أوكي عزيزي.
Okay.
Very nice of you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're
Bye bye.
welcome.
Hello.
Yeah. So Lawrence, you want to start us off?
So part of my job duties, I guess, as managing a firm is I look at, how long cases take to resolve, right? That's how I do a lot of my projections, how I figure out how much money we can spend on advertising, on systems, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
So we've settled, I think we're at around 3,000 cases right now that we've settled. And the average time on that, and this is just across the board, right? So obviously your case can settle sooner, your case can settle after, but on average, our cases resolve 2.5 years after the date of accident.
Okay.
So this, and I can go into more detail as to what goes in between that.
Yes.
Some go faster or some.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is-
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean,
the-
هذا المعدل.
That's my average.
Oh, this is
That's
your
my
average.
average.
Okay, go
Right.
ahead. تمام.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي، طبعا نشكر المتصلة. القضية مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه هو من بدل مالت الشركة لحد الآن تقريبا احنا سوينا تسوية إلى 3000 قضية. المعدل هل يمكن أقل أو لو شوية أكثر يطول؟ احتمال أكو.
نعم.
بس المعدل هي 2.5 سنين من يوم الحادث. من يوم الحادث 2.5 سنين. السنة الأولى
نعم.
هي من يوم الحادث إلى سنة من وراء الحادث.
نعم.
هاي السنة الأولى اللي هي تبقى ويا القسم مالتي اللي أنا أشتغل به.
نعم.
اللي هو البري ليتيجيشن. أي شيء إلا علاقة من قبل ما نرفع القضية من يوم السنة مال الحادث.
نعم.
وراها تقريبا سنة ونص نسوي
لازم تكمل
average.
And the filing could happen prior to the 1 year, right? We're just saying,
Absolutely.
you know, we obviously we have a 1 year statute of limitations.
Sometimes it takes less.
Your case. So essentially, what happens is from the on the pre-litigation part. Let's say you come to us right after an accident, the day after, whatever. Usually, we monitor your claim for as long as we need to, make sure that the insurance companies are paying your benefits, right? And usually within, I would say tomorrow, tell me what you think, but I would say between 3 to 6 months, usually there's some sort of issue that the insurance company creates to stop paying benefits.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Usually at the 6 month mark, it'll be an investigation that's all of a sudden it's happening, or the adjuster sends our client out for what they call an IME, and their doctor says that they don't no longer need any more treatment. They cut off benefits. There's a million reasons why they cut off benefits, but you can say, I would say between a 3 to 9 month period, something in between happens where the insurance company cuts off your benefits and stops essentially paying on your claim.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه أنا بنقلت إلى سنة. هاي إذا فتشي
كبير كلش
قضية مفتوحة والإنشورنس
You can say that's the deadline. You can say that's the deadline.
يعني
أكثر شيء. هذا الحد الأعلى لازم نوصل له وبعدين لازم نرفع قضية. أكثر القضايا طبعا الأكثر يعرفون بأنه الإنشورنس يحب يطلع أي شيء حتى ما يدفع أي شيء على هاي القضية.
نحكيها من أول مرة.
بالضبط. هواية الانشورنس كومبانيز تريد تشوف اكو مشاكل بالتغطية، تريد تاخذ إفادة قبل ما نرفع قضية، الإفادة تحت الحلفان وإذا احنا ما نحبذها. اللي يريد يسوي مثلا يدزوه إلى طبيبهم الخاص، طبيب الانشورنس الخاص، حتى يقول أنت بعد ما تحتاج أي مساعدات، لو يطلعون أي شيء يقدرون أي ثغرة يريدون يشوفوها. هاي تصير تقريبا من 3 أشهر إلى 9 أشهر إذا أكو شيء بالقضية. بالضبط.
So what's the issue, Sahar? After the time period where the insurance company stops paying your benefits,
right?
If your doctor says that you still need more treatment, you're still going to physical therapy, you're still getting khidma, you're still off of work, those benefits are not being paid. So what are we supposed to do? That's when we file a lawsuit against the insurance company.
Right.
هاي الفترة اللي الانشورنس ما تريد تدفعها، انت بهالحالة الطبيب مالتك بعدده يقول لك انت محتاج بالضبط، تحتاج علاج، تحتاج أوبر، مرات تحتاج عمليات، أدوية، بعدك تحتاج علاج طبيعي، انت تظل تروح، راح تبدي بالله تتراكم ومتى تندفع مساعداتك البيتية، مساعداتك الصحية، المايلات مالتك، الرواتب، هاي كلها تجمع. نوصل إلى مرحلة إذا مثلا إذا 9 أشهر هم ما دافعين، نوصل مرحلة بهيك حالة راح نرفع القضية ضد الانشورنس حتى يبدون يدفعون على القضية.
Yeah. So once I was going to say, so once the litigation starts, you're usually in litigation from, I would say, between 1 to 2 years. depending on, you know, how aggressive the insurance company wants to be, if they want to make any settlement offers prior to, if they want to wait till the eve of trial or go to trial. But like I said, we have our average, but that's kind of what the process is. Now, the issue with this process, or whatever you want to call it, is once the insurance company stops paying your benefits, what if you're off of work and they stop paying your benefits? Now you're waiting a year or two before you get any money at the end of the case.
Yeah.
So we always, we have a 98% success rate. We always deliver justice, but at the same time, it's tough for our clients because there's a waiting period.
Yeah.
They're not making payments during that time.
Yeah.
That 1 and 2 years in litigation, there's no money going out
No. To the client.
to the client.
من نرفع القضية معناته بأنه نعرف بأنه الانشورنس ما يدفع. نرفع القضية تطول بين السنة إلى سنتين. طبعا مثل ما قلنا المعدل هي سنة ونص، بس تطول من السنة إلى سنتين. من نرفع القضية ذاك الوقت بعد ماكو أي الزبون المفروض ما يخلي بباله بأنه راح يحصل أي فلوس بهاي الفترة.
نعم.
الانشورنس ما تدفع أي شيء.
مال اول سنه اول فتره هذه اللي
كله.
This is after they cut them off.
نعم.
ورا ما يقطعون كل شيء.
نعم.
من يقطعونه بعد انتهى، لازم ننتظر على ما يصير تسوية. التسوية احتمال الانشورنس إذا مقتنع، إذا مقتنع احتمال تخلص بسرعة. إذا يعاند ويريد ويسوي مشاكل تطول، يريد يصعدها للمحكمة همنا تطول أكثر بعد. يعتمد على كل قضية، ماكو قضيتين نفس الشكل دائما احنا نقولها. المشكلة وين يوقع بها الزبون؟ الزبون بالضبط. الزبون مثلا إذا عنده راتب وراتبه مقطوع هاي السنة سنة ونص، شلون راح يعيشها؟ هنا النقطة اللي احنا ربحنا 98% من كل القضايا، نجيب الفلوس بس مو رأسا، لازم ننتظر تاخذ وقت.
And you know, there's really not much we can do about this.
Yes.
You know, the court systems are just, you know, that's the court systems. They have their own processes, and they have a schedule of events, and we got to follow them.
هاي مو احنا اللي نسويها. المحكمة هي السيستم مالتها هيك يمشي. عندهم كل فترة كم شهر محدد، كل جزء،
كل موضوع،
كل جزء يفوت بالقضية نفسها بعدة أجزاء. فلذلك احنا بهالحالة ما نقدر نسوي كل شيء للزبون. مع الأسف ماكو فشي بيدنا نقدر نسويه خلال هالسنة سنة ونص نهائيا.
And it's tough explaining that to the client. You know, I believe me, I understand it. Just, you know.
سؤال يقول
we got a question on Facebook.
employment office عندكم شغلة ويا employment office تقدرون
So unemployment.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I just wanted to mention, you know, as far as the length of time the case takes, very briefly before we get into that question, there are cases that I've settled in 6 months, and there are cases that pay benefits, and they pay them all, and we've closed some cases where they've actually paid all the benefits up until the point where the person no longer needs them.
Right.
There's no dispute, and so it's not every case that takes 2.5 years, right? I just want to make that clear. There are plenty of cases where things go right, it's resolved, we settle the portions that need to be settled, everything else is resolved, you know, amicably, and it's done. But more people come to us because there are issues, right? And they're being denied. So that's why the average case is going to take a while.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه أكو قسم من القضايا يدفعوها وتنحل قبل السنة إذا الزبون صار زين ورجع للشغل مالته ودفعوا هم كل الرواتب ودفعوا كل البلات مالتهم، ماكو داعي نرفع قضية. أكو هيك قضايا بس كل مدى
المعقدة
كل
ما نتقدم كل ما الانشورنس يصير أصعب وأصعب وأصعب.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question? Go ahead.
No, about employment office. يعني تشتغلون هيك شغلات هذا قصدي.
Just
unemployment. If we do unemployment, نعم يتصلون بينا للمكتب وإحنا نقدر ننجزهم إلى unemployment.
يعني تخابرون المكتب على 248-702-6641.
Yeah. So with unemployment specifically, though, you have to be a little careful. You generally cannot claim, if the question is, can you claim unemployment while you're off work because of an accident? The answer is actually no, right? And the reason for that is because unemployment, generally speaking, requires that you be willing and able to work, okay? And that you're off work because the employer has terminated you, or
laid off.
You've been laid off for some reason, okay? Whereas the auto claims require that you are unable to work as opposed to able and willing to work, okay? That you are unable to work
you will get unemployment.
because of, well, no, you won't, is what I'm trying to say. Because if you're injured as a result of a motor vehicle accident and you can't work, you will not be entitled to unemployment, because either you can work because you're off work, due to no fault of your own, or you can't work because you're injured. It can't be both.
Yes.
Okay, so actually, with respect to the unemployment question, you have to make sure it's clear what they're asking. If they're asking, can I collect unemployment while also collecting benefits from the no-fault?
We give them the
they're
no.
asking if we do unemployment.
You do
in
that?
our-
just if we do
if
it.
we do it, yes or no, in the office. That's why I said
I
they
see.
can call the office. إذا عندهم سؤال أقدر أشرح لهم أني
نعم.
Yeah, we can
بالمكتب
refer them.
ونقدر همنا ندزهم إلى محامي مال
يعني تتصلون على مرة ثانية نقولها 248-702-6641. تتصلون تحجون يا تمارة.
John does bring up a good point. So if you have a car accident and you're making a claim for unemployment, please consult with your lawyer before you do so.
Absolutely.
The papers that you are signing are telling the government that you are able to work.
Yes. إذا كنت بحادث سيارة وكنت تشتغل وتروح ما تقدر تروح تسوي unemployment.
صحيح.
ما يصير، لأنه واحدة من الأسئلة الموجودة بالunemployment لا، هل أنت قادر أن تعمل؟ هل أنت جسديا تقدر تعمل تشتغل؟ أنت ما تقدر جسديا تشتغل لأنه أنت كان عندك حادث سيارة وطلعت من عند الحادث لأن أنت ما تقدر تشتغل. So رجاء أول شيء اتكلموا مع المحامي مالتكم قبل ما تسوون unemployment. هذا فشي جدا مهم إذا أنتم كنتوا بحادث سيارة.
Now there's and that's different from Social Security disability, right?
Yes,
Because you can apply for disability saying that you're injured and no longer ever able to work again or something like that. Okay, but that is not unemployment. They're different things.
Yes. إذا تقدم إلى السوشيال سيكيورتي ديسابيلتي بأنه السوشيال سيكيورتي مال الإعاقة، هذا واحد. هاي بأنه أنت كنت بحادث وصرت معاق وبعد ما تقدر تشتغل لفترة أو بعد ما تقدر تشتغل نهائيا. هاي غير شكل عن الunemployment نهائيا.
So it's funny that I just thought about something. Yeah, very good question.
Yes.
So yesterday we had a deposition. This is kind of related to unemployment. We had a deposition yesterday in our office. I was being handled by attorney Kevin Kashat from our office, and there was a translator that was involved. And the issue became they were asking the insurance company was asking our client if they were on unemployment. Okay, and unemployment literally translates in Arabic as being not employed.
Yes.
So she's answering not employed, yes, but it's translating as is she on unemployment? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You have to be very careful.
Right. So thankfully, Kevin understands the Arabic language, and he was able to catch it and made it right on the record. But it's something that you have to be careful of when you're doing a lot of translating.
Yeah. البارحة كان عندنا إفادة لواحد من الزبائن العرب، فعنده مترجم. كان المحامي كيفن قاشات. كيفن همنا
عربي
شوية، مو كل شوية ما يقدر يحكي بس يفتهم شوية. يس. اللي صار بأنه سألوه هل أنت مقدمة على unemployment؟ الترجمة العربية
الآن يعني
لا unemployment معناته هل أنت ما تشتغلين؟ فهي قالت نعم أنا ما أشتغل. فهو قال لهم إيه نعم عندها unemployment. فكيفن لزمها لأنه هاي تغير القضية من فوق لجوا، يعني همزين حتى على ما تصلح
يراد لها وقت.
التقارير يراد لها وقت كلش طويل. تعالوا اثبتوا ورجعوا مرة
وانتوا
الأخرى
حكيتوا
وسوها
هيجي.
بالضبط. لقفها من البداية بأنه هاي نو أنت unemployment تغاشي كل ما أنت ما تشتغلين.
يعني هذا دلالة على أنه مكتب قاجي سمارت.
الحمد لله. Yes.
Look, these are really the small things that we catch every day that goes a long way, that, you know, other lawyers just, you know, hey, whatever, they're in deposition, they're on their laptop, they're not even paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, you can catch
John,
this.
we've both seen those lawyers
Yeah.
before in depositions, kind of.
هواية من المحامين يكونون خلال الإفادة مالتهم على الكمبيوتر مالتهم لو يسوون غير شكل ما منتبهين يعني 100% بالضبط.
I saw a lawyer one time sleeping in deposition.
مثلا another very good for Arabic speaking, between neck and knee in Arabic is very, very close. And if you don't have the right Arabic dialect, you can make you can switch everything.
But you know what, the good thing is, like, whether or not you speak Arabic, even if you only speak English, you know, usually you've already met with your client, right? You know what their complaints are, you know whether or not they've applied for unemployment. So a lot of the times, you know, I mean, I catch these things too. I'm like, hold on, there's a mistranslation. Let me, you know, and I'll go off the record and I'll hash it out and I'll clarify it later, because, you know, you can tell when.
1 minute.
No, it changes the whole case, right?
Well, it can.
That's why we always say we prep our client. فشي جدا مهم. احنا نجهز، لذلك يقعد المحامي ساعتين قبل الإفادة، حتى لو المحامي يكون يحكي بس إنجليزي ما يفتهم العربي، هم يقدر يلقف هاي بأنه أكو غلط بالترجمة، لأنه راح يعرف بالإنجليزي شنو الترجمة.
نفس الحكاية
بالضبط. فهاي جدا احنا هاي عندنا فشي جدا جدا مهم بأنه نحضر للإفادة مالتنا.
Yeah. One thing I just have one last thing, because we were talking about the amendment to the No Fault Act, and I just wanted to put in one last thing that's important that I didn't quite mention, which is because we were talking about how they got rid of the 56 hours requirement, right? As far as the maximum. And what they've done is they've said that the insurer is required now to pay not more than 16 hours per day per individual, but may contract for more than 16 hours per day per individual. So it's still, there's a question there as to whether or not it's
still better than 56 hours.
But it's better than 56. Right. But anyway, I just wanted to get that in there because we didn't quite finish that. So
good. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا ست مارة. مستمعينا الأعزاء، مشاهدينا الأكارم، كنا مع برنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي. نلتقيكم الأسبوع القادم إن شاء الله. تعاد هذه الحلقة إن شاء الله يوم الثلاثاء. إلى اللقاء يا أحلى الأصدقاء.